Okay. Good morning, everyone. I had some issues getting in this morning, but I am here. Good morning. And my name is Sean Brown, and I am the Urban Disruptor, and this is the Urban Disruptor's weekly wrap up. Today, I have a guest, and before that, I'm going to do as usual and go over. Um, I'm going to go over the news and interview the guest to talk about some things that are going on in our community. I want everybody, as you tune in, please share this so that other people can see it too and know what's going on. Um, I'm going to start a I'm going to start a party to make sure that people can see this. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you are healthy. I hope that you are well. Hope that everything is going nicely with you. There's so much to talk about as usual. There's so much going on. I'm going to share this so that I can get more people to see it. Thank you so much for tuning in today to the Urban Disruptors Weekly Wrap Up. I got some news to share about some things that have been happening in our community, and I have a special guest, Vanessa. She'll be on in about 10 minutes. Vanessa, thank you for being in the waiting room. I'll pull you on. I want to just make sure that. Oh, here we go. I just want to make sure I get as many people on this as possible. You got to remind some folks about what's going on. Here we go. All right. Took me a while to get here. Here we are. Okay, so again, thank you so much. My name is Sean Brown. I am the Urban Disruptor, and this is the weekly wrap up. Today, I'm going to talk about a little bit of national news and state news, some of the things that have been happening in our community. If you're looking for a video, I don't have it. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. I don't know why anyone would think that was true anyway, but nonetheless. So if you're in here for fireworks, you just may not get them. Sorry, my head is down. I'm just inviting a few people so that I can get eyes on the show as we talk about the news and what's going on in our community. There's today we're going to talk in terms of news. We're going to talk about some stuff going on in education, some stuff going on in city government, some stuff going on with some gangsters in our community. And I hope that you can participate and join us as we go through this. I hope that you and your family are healthy, that you are drinking water, you're eating vegetables, you're getting exercise. I think a lot of the issues that I see even in the news are due to us not being able to take care of ourselves properly. And I'm going to make a confession that I realized in the last month, a lesson I wish I learned a long time ago, which is that until I'm in balance, until my chakras are aligned, technically, until I find peace with myself, it's very difficult for me to be an effective leader in my community with anyone else. I'm at my best when I'm in balance, and I'm at my worst when I'm off, when I'm not. And it may not, in a moment, I may not see that I'm off. I may not find that I'm off balance. I might not see that I'm not necessarily making the best decisions. But once I find that balance and get closer to alignment, then the wisdom hits me that there's something better that I can do to make better decisions for myself and for my community. And until we're able to be honest with ourselves about the impact of the decisions that we make and how they have on other people's lives and our own futures, we won't be able to have the impact that we truly need for our community. A few months ago, there were meetings after the George Floyd murder, and I joined those tables. And one of the things that I learned in the process is that I can only be as effective as the team that I'm a part of. And as I join the team, I can only be good if I'm at peace with myself and I have my own strategy for my own life. So this is my wish for everyone else, is that you find that peace as you go through whatever it is. So please share this, please watch this, Please let your friends know. Start a watch party and let us. I think I've invited enough people. Let's get into it right now, and then I'll bring on Vanessa as our guest. So first story from a few days ago. 18-year-old has been charged in a fatal shooting of a New Jersey man outside a grocery store. 18-year-old Camden County man has been charged in a fatal shooting outside a Pennsauken grocery store last month. I'm not going to read his name because he has not been convicted. He faces first-degree murder and weapons charges in the shooting of Dexter Threadgill, 35, also of Pennsauken. This happened on the 4700 block of Pennsauken, which means it was 47th and 47th Street, off of 47th Street. Another story of violence. A local activist has been charged with assault. And again, just to stick with my policy, he has not been convicted of anything, so I will not say his name, but a local activist in Camden has been charged with assault. The story, as written by Stephen Rodas, the Courier Post also had a story on it as well. An activist in the Camden School District is facing 3 charges that stem from an October 10th incident. A spokesperson for the prosecutor's office has confirmed. He's been charged with third-degree assault, unlawful possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, and it gets into that. This is something that I talked about a little bit on my Facebook earlier in the week, and I know so many people involved that it's hard for me to. I can't even pretend, and it's. The challenge is, how do I speak on this in a way that's objective and that can allow us to move forward as a community? So I think there are a few lessons to learn from what occurred. One is all right, let me start with this. Violence is not a way to solve our issues. Every once in a while, I feel like slapping somebody upside the head. Every once in a while, I feel like punching somebody in the face, but it's an emotional feeling that is not a part of me being a rational person that needs to develop a strategy in order to deal with conflict with other people. So when I'm being emotional, and I'm acting on impulse, the idea of hitting somebody may come to my mind. But then when I think it through, when I have a good set of people around me, when I have good friends and family around me, it doesn't get that far. So no matter how many arguments we may have had or disagreements we may have had, there is no way that Keisha is going to let me be in a position of yelling at anybody or hitting anybody. It wouldn't get that far. My friends around me for years, Kyrie, Paul, God bless his soul, Kenise, and I could keep Elton, I could keep naming people. They won't let me get into that position. They check my ego. They tell me when they think that I'm wrong and I'm off. They don't do it on Facebook occasionally. They tell me to my face or through text message or through a phone call. All of us that consider ourselves community leaders have to have a balance in our friendships and our alliances and allegiances that we have. And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this later. But I think that's a big takeaway. I hope that the person who's been charged with assault, I wish his family well. I know his family. I want them to be okay. But to the person that got hurt, he did not deserve that. It should not have happened. There really is no justification for it at all. I don't care if a person, no matter how much a person is drinking, as men, we always have to have self-control. And the key to self-control, wow, I put this on Facebook a few years ago and it always stuck with me. I mean, I don't know if she came up with it or if she was quoting someone else, but the key to a man being a man and showing his masculinity is not in showing his temper or ability to hit. It's showing his self-control and ability to calm himself when tensions arise. It's very critical. And how can we as community leaders talk about the issues of violence in our community if we have our own ways of violence? And remember, words can be violent too. All right, next topic. There is a school board election that's going on. I talked about this a lot. I think I might bring this topic back up, but I want to bring Vanessa on, so I'm gonna go through the news quickly. There's another article about the challenges of virtual learning that Stephen Rodas wrote that's in Tap Into. It talks about the challenges of devices, technology. I found out a lot of students last year did not return. A lot of seniors last year did not return their laptops as they were supposed to. They were on loan. They weren't gifts. Graduated seniors, return your laptops to the district because the district needs them. So anyway, there are plenty of articles in education. Shout out to Phaedra, to Stephen, and to all the other journalists who are writing these stories. If we take time to follow Hood News or South Jersey News doesn't really put articles up, but if you take time to follow Hood News on Facebook, you'll see a lot of these stories shared, so you can get an idea of what's going on. Another article: Camden nonprofit city but heads over Black Lives Matter street mural. So there is a wave of people who are putting murals online. That are putting murals, on streets, and the city and the community didn't necessarily agree on where or how it should be done. Read the article for more details. All right, I'm about to bring on our next guest, and I just want to set this up before I bring her on. Our next guest is Vanessa Graber. I've known Vanessa Graber actually for a few years because Vanessa worked for Philly Cam, and I used to work for Media Mobilizing Project, and we did a small project then. Vanessa has been super helpful in giving the WCMD family here advice and counsel on how we can grow and expand this media platform to more people. We've obviously had challenges due to COVID-19. And Vanessa is working on a new project now, working at Free Press. Some of us may remember James Thompson or Mike Rispoli from Free Press because they've been in Camden doing things for a few years. So let me bring her on and we will take it from there. So here we are. Good morning, Vanessa.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. You're I think you know this, but you are live in front of a group of people, so don't say anything inappropriate.
Oh, I'll try to, clean.
You're my first guest in a while. I think I accidentally scared some people in Camden from coming on because there's so many tensions. I think people are being real careful on what they want to say right now, but we should have a fun time.
Always a fun time. We always have good conversations, so it's fun to kind of do this again in the form of a show.
Great. So my first question for you is the toughest question I want to ask. It wasn't on the list, so don't get nervous. But Vanessa, how is Oscar doing?
Oh, Oscar is my dog. Oscar is named after a famous Puerto Rican revolutionary, Oscar Lopez, who was a independence activist. So his name's Oscar Lopez Sanchez. But he's good. I adopted him from the shelter at the SPCA, and pit bulls, they get a bad rap, they're discriminated against. So decided to rescue one. And so this is my message. There's lots of animals out there that need to be rescued. Support your local animal shelters. But he's doing great.
Great. So Vanessa, as you know, most of my work over the years has been in Camden, but I've worked in Trenton, I've worked in Newark, Jersey City, Atlantic City, also in Philadelphia. Philly and Camden, I think, have a lot of similarities, especially when it comes to the drug market and crime. Philly has figured out a few things that Camden has not. Camden and New Jersey have figured out a few things that Philadelphia and Pennsylvania have not. I tell people all the time, the worst district school physically looks way better than the average public school in Philadelphia. I've been in many public schools in Philadelphia, and they were an absolute. I was actually horrified by what I saw, and actually the Philadelphia and Pennsylvania should be ashamed of what they've done to public education there. With that said, as you go through both states, what lessons do you think we have over here in Camden or New Jersey that we can learn about what's either going well or what's not going well that we shouldn't repeat?
Well, one of the things that I love about Philly is that there is a lot of organizing and mobilizing that has affected change and actually, changed policies and passed laws and things like that. And so like one of the most recent things I was impressed by was the ability to get a third party candidate voted onto city council, right? Kendra Brooks from the Working Families Party.
I know her.
Yeah, huge victory, right?
Yeah.
And that is from a lot of door knocking and community organizing. And, you know, even though Larry Krasner is a controversial figure, I still think he is a lot better and different than our past district attorney, Seth Williams. And, you know, he's known as a progressive prosecutor. That is debatable, right? Like, what is the standard for comparison? But the reality is that he had a community-backed campaign, and a lot of organizers and activists did the same thing, knocked on doors and mobilized to get him elected. That being said, I think that, you know, cities all across the United States, you know, can learn from that. And I've certainly been inspired by seeing third-party candidates elected in Portland and Seattle and other parts of the country. You know, there's a lot of movement now on police reform, right? And so one of the things I find interesting is that a lot of people will cite the Camden County model as being a model for police reform, which I think is also debatable. I don't think that that is the best model to look to. But I do think that there are some good things happening in Philadelphia when it comes to police accountability in terms of community organizing and the type of pressure that people are putting at the citywide level. And I think that in general, there's a lot of coalition building here in Philly, right? A lot of different groups working together. More so out of necessity than anything, right? Like we have to work together. We have to figure out a way to agree on some things to be able to push different policies forward. I'm incredibly encouraged by all the student organizing, right? Philadelphia Student Union and students, you know, advocating for themselves and being able to get rid of the school reform commission, getting a school board, even though a school board is appointed, not elected, it's, you know, again, still steps in the right direction. We have a lot of work to do with schools because of the condition that they're in and the inequalities that exist with the digital divide, et cetera. But I do feel that Philadelphia has had some victories at many different levels. And I think that one of the things in Camden is there's still a lot of people siloed, even though it's a smaller city, right? And if people can band together to push a specific policy, I think that there can be incredible opportunities. But we're also up against like the Norcross political machine in South Jersey, right? So it's really different. No, we have to say what it is, right? Because like political organizing happens within a context, right? And Jersey, right. That context is like the Norcross political machine. And so we have to name it, right?
One of the things, before I even get to the next question, I want to say on this is, and I know you and I talked about this personally, but I'll share, is that George Norcross is in Camden with a presence because of a lack of leadership that comes from our own community. So when you have people who lead the Democratic Party, who don't take their job seriously, don't raise their own money, don't raise money from the community to support candidates, it leaves this vacuum where George is able to swoop in. And when leaders in our community submit their power to George, as a prideful older guy that's been around for a long time, he's not going to be like, no, don't call on me. He's going to step up when his power is invited into Camden. I'll put it that way, by a few people, not the masses, but his power is invited into Camden to the point to where, I just was told off about this the other day, even being next to him is guilt by association, even if it's within a bigger strategy. So I completely agree. And I just wanted to say something else on what you just said too about Seth Williams. There's this trend that I see where Black men get into a position of power and leadership where they seem to be qualified, prepared, awesome in many ways, but then just something happens where the power gets to them and forces drag them. Same thing happened to Shaka Fatah. It's happened in Camden with a few of our leaders, where people who had a lot of promise just don't end up stepping up to the plate. And I know when I was on the school board, I felt overwhelmed by the pressure at times. And in part, it was because I didn't necessarily build a network of people around me like I have now to not protect me, but to hold me accountable and keep me on my toes with the promises that I've made and make sure bad people or bad things stay away from me. Like that cover is necessary.
Yeah, I think capitalism and like status symbols like have a lot to do with that, right? Because there's this like enormous pressure to attain material wealth and to have things to like, show off your status. And that's why it's like hard for like poor people, working class people to run for office, right? Like I remember like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being made fun of or being criticized because she had like bought suits and returned them, or she like shopped from the thrift stores just to find like nice clothes. And then when she finally did have a designer suit, they told her, "Oh, look, you're wearing $1,000 suit," which she said was borrowed. So she didn't have enough money to like move to DC and like live in an apartment when she first got elected to office, right? So these are like the very real things that people experience when they run for office. And I do think that people start to figure out different ways to acquire those things. Like, oh, how can I be a congressman and I drive like an old Toyota? So people start scheming and scamming, right? In order to look the part, to fit in. And you start to move within different circles of people with money, right? Like you inevitably are not going to be still hanging out with the same neighborhood people or people you grew up with. You're now, thrust into like a different atmosphere where people are at country clubs, people are throwing down at big fundraising dinners. And so I think that that's a huge element as to why people then, engage in corruption, right? And activities where they're getting kickbacks and bribes and stuff like that whole like element of getting rich and doing it by any means possible to stay in power is a reason why we have so much corruption in like every single city. It's no by means an excuse, but we have to make it easier for like everyday people to get into office and to not be able to be so easily tempted by these things.
That's right. I'm going to switch gears a little bit on the next question. You are you're a media expert, but in many ways I would describe you as being an activist as well, just as I am. I think yesterday you were protesting against Eric Trump in Philly. Is that right?
So on Friday night, Eric Trump went to Philly. We organized a protest. And then yesterday we were getting out the vote in Hunting Park in North Philly.
So as a person who's been described as an activist myself a few times, what would you say is the state of activism right now at the local level? Like, are you impressed by what you see, disappointed? Where do you think it's going? I have my own thoughts on this too.
Well, I think there's like a lot of different ways we can like describe our work and what we do. I think a lot of what we do, Sean, is like what we call movement journalism, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're providing information and profiling people and stories to elevate and empower people, right? Ultimately, like that's our goal. We certainly don't do it for the money, And I also think like I identify more as a community organizer than like a quote unquote activist. I think that community organizers engage a lot more with people in their neighborhoods and in their communities and do a lot of listening. And I think that's like the key thing that I think activists are more like outward, external, like advocating for something. Whereas like organizers are finding out like what people need, how they're feeling, what their concerns are, and giving people options to like mobilize and take action and change systems of power and oppression. And so when it comes to like the scene of activism, I think the what's missing is the community organizing part. Like protests are cool. We see a lot of protests. And there's a group, I'm not going to name them, but they always protest Trump. And they approached us and said, hey, can we like join your group, Philly Boricuas? And we're like, no. And the reason why we don't want to engage a group like that is because there is no community organizing. There's no community building. They literally spend no time in North Philly finding out what's going on with people. So, my critique of a lot of protests and rallies and media spectacles is that it needs to go deeper than that, right? Like, we need to educate people and we need to build power among poor and working class people. And I do think that that's happening, but a lot of the people and groups that are doing that move a lot more silently. Like, one of the groups that I'm always impressed by is like the Poor People's Campaign in New Jersey. Um, you know, they're not always out there protesting and in the media, but they are definitely mobilizing people on a lot of different issues, especially housing, because housing is just like really, really expensive in New Jersey. And a lot of people lack access to affordable housing and healthcare. In Pennsylvania, there's a group called Put People First, and they do these like trainings, like they're like really in-depth trainings and like leadership academies. And this is like to build a constituency of people fighting for healthcare. And that's what I think is needed. Like, we need to like approach movement building over a long period of time. And there's so much focus around the election and like what's going to happen now. But I think that, again, with the uprisings, we see a lot of new people, especially younger people, who are taking to the streets, who are sick of the pandemic. They're sick of being, disenfranchised. A lot of young people have student loan debt. They don't have job opportunities. They're concerned about the climate crisis. So we've seen a lot of young people take to the streets. But again, there needs to be organizers who are taking those people and giving them the tools and the resources to be able to take that anger and frustration and actually use it to like change these systems of oppression.
That's right.
So that's the thing that I'm most concerned about with the elections. And don't get me wrong, like, we're getting out the vote. I'm working, I'm nonpartisan. I'll just say that we're not affiliated with
Of course you are. Of course. Me too.
I mean, I'm not a Democrat. I really haven't been. So I'll say that, I'm an independent voter. I vote on people and on the individual issues. And I pick people that are going to do the least amount of harm to our community.
Right.
So that's my message to people who say, because we hear it a lot. They say both parties are bad. And so you have to listen to that, right? And so what we try to tell people is, well, pick the people, not the parties, pick the people that do the least amount of harm.
And what I've noticed in the local level is that being a Democrat in Camden or in Philly is not about is not rooted in believing in, let's say, progressive principles. It's rooted in the most convenient pathway to power, right? So it's like, I want to be in office. I want to be this position. I want to be mayor. I want to be council. And I'm not saying this about this mayor per se or this council members per se, but just in general, generally speaking, the pathway to do that is, at least the way we had the system set up in Camden with partisan elections, is to run in a primary, win it, and then run in a general election against basically no opposition. So as long as you're endorsed by the party, you win. But only that, it's not like all 40 committee people in Camden are sitting in a room and interviewing people to pick the best person. It's between 3 to 5 people. It's 3 to 5 people who identify who this person will be that represents the Democratic Party. And if you look at the policies we had, let's say 5 years ago, these are really corporate Democrats that were supporting the expansion of the free market for corporations, but not really doing much to lift the concerns of poor people, which is not progressive at all.
Yeah, I mean, and the reality is that especially in some of the poorest districts, those legislators have failed people.
Yes.
A lot of them have been corrupt and been removed from office.
Yes.
So I think people are 100% valid in saying, one party is racist and is going to cut everything, and the other party is corrupt and doesn't really represent us. We hear all of that, but we also say, like, we're trying to reduce harm, right? And the real way to do that is by organizing, volunteering, educating yourself, and getting involved in what's going on. And so with so much attention on the election, like we're like, what, like 2 weeks out now? Like, we really have to think about beyond the election, right?
Right.
And like the next 4 years. The activism, the organizing doesn't stop after November 3rd. I mean, if Joe Biden gets elected, there's still so much work to do, right? Like the climate crisis for me is like one of the top issues, right? Especially because, my family is in Puerto Rico. These storms keep hitting. Hurricane Maria, like pretty much obliterated the island. We saw last year the hurricane that obliterated the Bahamas, Category 5. So another hurricane comes and the island's going to be devastated. These hurricanes are being caused by the climate crisis. We see what's happening with the wildfires, the flooding, the storms. So for me, like that is a really big issue.
Well, when you bring up Puerto Rico though, and I'm thinking of Camden and Philly as well, what's more damaging to I'm going to ask a theoretical question here. What's more damaging to the people, the leadership, the political leadership, or climate change? Because the political leadership in many of these places isn't doing a great job of really, I know that's your point, but it's not doing a great job of addressing these issues.
All I'm saying is that the climate crisis, I wouldn't even call it climate change, it's a crisis at this point, is an existential threat to our existence. And both parties fall short on that.
Right.
And so if the Democrats get elected, there is still a lot of work to do to get rid of these energy companies' influence over the policies, right? And that's the reality, is that a lot of these corporations, a lot of the special interests, they are invested in both parties. They're literally funding both candidates. So the work doesn't stop just because a Democrat gets elected. Like I'll take marijuana legalization in New Jersey, right? Who held up marijuana legalization? It was Democrats, right? And, they had to put it to the ballot initiative vote because the Democratic leadership couldn't agree on anything with a Democratic governor willing to sign it. So there's just many examples of that. And so all I'm trying to say is that, we need to work to hold leaders accountable once they're elected into power, because people make a lot of promises. Remember Hope and Change, right? A lot of people stopped really organizing after Obama got in power. I was part of the anti-war movement in the early 2000s. And one of Obama's campaign promises was to end the wars. We're still at war in Iraq and Afghanistan, right? After all these years. And what happened to that movement fizzled out a lot after Obama got elected. So that's my biggest fear, right? Is that organizing will kind of like die down just because Democrats get into power. And so we need to hold all power structures accountable, no matter who wins. So that to me is like the key. Is long-term organizing. We need a lot more political education. People don't know how elections work. They don't know how bills are passed. They don't know what the heck they're voting for. They don't know who's running for what. So voter registration is really a catch-all for like civic education, because we actually are not registering that many people. A lot of people are already registered, but they say things like, can I still go to the polls? What are these ballot questions?
How much does it cost?
Right. Who's running in my district?
Right.
Like, who's my representative? What's on the election besides president?
So Vanessa, that leads me to my next question. But first, just for anybody just tuning in, my name is Sean Brown. I am from here. I'm right here in Camden, New Jersey at WCMD Studios. I'm the Urban Disruptor. This is a show about news and politics in Camden. Thank you so much if you're just tuning in. Today, my guest is Vanessa Maria Graber of Free Press, formerly of Philly Cam. She is a longtime activist and media organizer, has been super helpful in my life. And I'm sure you can see and hear the wisdom espousing from her right now. If you're watching this, please share it. If you have a question or comment, put it in the comments. I can see it now. I have my next question for you, Vanessa, but just first, I just want to acknowledge just a few comments. So Kyrie Golden, who is one of the most brilliant people I know, says it seems like issues fall into the background in Camden politics. He also said one party in particular is hell bent on destroying the earth. Shaniqua Biles, climate crisis is here in Camden. We don't need a hurricane. Do you see what happens during a normal rainfall? And I think she's referring to the flooding. Kyrie has a little bit more to say on the one party is adversarial to logic and rationale, or excuse me, irrational thinking. The other party is just lackluster. They're not the same.
Yeah, I mean, one party is like colluding with white supremacists. So I just want to put that out there, right? Like,
no, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, like I said,
one party is colluding with white supremacists, and the other party has not figured out how to handle white supremacy.
Right. I don't think the Democrats know how to defend, right? Like, there's no defense.
But in defense of the Democrats, though, there is more diversity within the Democratic Party than within the Republican Party. Republican Party is basically two groups: people that care about making more money and becoming rich and the stock market going up, and the other group are people who are fake religious zealots who think that their faith and love in God gives them the right to judge other people, and that the Book of Deuteronomy should be public policy. I find both of those sides to be problematic in certain ways. Although I know the hearts of my conservative friends and know that they're at least think they're coming from a good place. But I just think their thinking is broken, just as I'm sure they think mine is. I want to just move on to the next question though. Okay. So I need a therapy session with you real quick, Vanessa. I got gently attacked because I set the stage for the story that I talked about earlier in Camden being known. I think more people found out about it than they otherwise would have. And I feel split. I do. This is cognitive dissonance. One part of my brain is like, I'm in this community. I have long-standing relationships with people. I wouldn't call them friends, but they're certainly people who have been political allies or professional colleagues from time to time. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is I have responsibility to share information, but more so I'm only sharing information because I need this stuff to move along. I need people to be aware of what's going on so we can make some better decisions and we can get some better policies, because the lethargy and stagnation in our city is very draining. It's very depressing. It makes people want to move. It makes people not want to be involved. So I need to figure. So help me figure out: do I have a greater loyalty to professional colleagues that I'm barely doing anything with, or should my activities be more so on this responsibility that I have and what I'm doing right now and sharing information with the community, even if it occasionally includes people that I know?
It is inevitable that people that will do shady things and you will have to expose them and you will have to take the flak for that. And I've certainly had to do that too. And, some people don't like you when you call people out. And I think that as a journalist, right, again, job is a watchdog, right? You're holding the powers to be accountable no matter who they are. And sometimes people that we like disappoint us and they do things that harm the community. I do think that what happened last weekend at that event was harmful to the community. And I do think a community discussion needs to be had about the behavior of people in leadership positions, right? And people who are abusing their power and people setting an example, especially people working with youth. So I personally didn't find anything wrong with you wanting to have a conversation about that. I think that, the stories that followed anyway did that, right? Like journalists were like jumped on it. I do have a problem with people, do it for ulterior motives, right? To sensationalize things, to get clicks, to get likes, to get notoriety. I don't like that type of like gossip-based journalism. And I could name some publications that engage in that sort of thing. But if your interest is really to have a discussion about it and to understand the implications of that behavior and its impact on people, then I think that you are just in what you did. It's all about intentions and impact, right? So what was the impact of what you posted and what you said? And if the impact is that people are aware, they're concerned, they want to pursue this further, then I think that's a good thing. And I think it's needed personally.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And yeah, that's helpful. All right, I'm going to move on. Just a couple more questions. So, okay, so I got 2 questions. So, one part of my brain is like, I'm in this community. I have long-standing relationships with people. And I think more people found out about it than they otherwise would have. I So it's 10:52. So I'm gonna ask you, can you give, so you are working on a project with Outlier Media, and that deals with SMS, which is a fancy term for SMS, which is a term for text messaging. Can you speak a little bit on that, and how the work that you're doing professionally to make sure people in our community are getting more access to information and news?
Yeah, so I'll just preface that by saying for like the last 10 years, I was part of the community radio movement and also like media reform in general. The problem is that only 5 companies own the majority of media in this country. Most newsrooms are majority white, and they're majority white older males. The impact of that is that we have news and information that's biased, that excludes people and disenfranchises people, right? Also, a capitalist media model is concerned about profit, right? How many ears and eyes can we get on the content for our advertisers? It's not based in actually informing, educating, and empowering people. We do have nonprofit journalism, etc. Community media has always been an alternative to that, right? Organizing people to create media that's more reflective of their communities, that serves people, that educates them, and that is not rooted in profit making. So I recently joined Free Press after I co-founded WPPM in Philly, which is a community radio station. And I took a lot of the lessons that I learned in organizing with the community to find out what kind of programming and content serves them, to apply this to New Jersey. So we're working in Newark, Atlantic City, and Camden, and we're working with Outlier Media to do text message-based research with people to find out what their biggest questions are. We did this research in Newark and Atlantic City already. Camden will be the next place that we do it. And we basically ask, what are your biggest questions? What do you and your family need to survive and thrive? And in both Atlantic City and Camden, most of the respondents who really needed information about how to meet their basic needs, right? They have questions about how can I get food? How can I get money? And they have questions about COVID-19. That means there's some type of breakdown or dysfunction of media. Those people are not getting the information they need in order to thrive. So then the question is, how can we work with newsrooms and journalists to better inform these people and get them the information that they need? Second, it's a question of resources, right? So if people don't have food and basic necessities, is it because they don't have that information, or is it because there's a lack of resources?
Right.
And so then it's journalists' job to hold those people accountable, right? Like if there's not enough food in Atlantic City and Camden, what's going on with the food pantries? What's going on with food distribution? What's going on with SNAP benefits? And then it's journalists' job to investigate those things and do stories about it, right? Again, holding the institutions of power accountable. So we're about to do that work in Camden to find out what Camden residents' biggest questions are. And we're going to be asking the same set of questions, which is, what information do you need? And also we ask people about misinformation and rumors. That's helpful to know. We found that in both Atlantic City and Newark, people have a lot of questions about, misinformation and rumor about the next round of stimulus checks. And that's no surprise because there's a lot of confusion around that. So with the Camden News and Information Hub, we hope to pull together a collaboration of journalists, independent media makers, freelancers, community media folks to look at, the data from that survey to find out, okay, where are the main areas? If I had to guess, like my educated guess is that people in Camden will also have questions about getting their basic needs met. And then we'll work together to create stories to inform people. And hopefully we can get a diverse set of viewpoints. We can train community members to do journalism and media, and we can engage in a variety of different forms of storytelling, because not everybody wants to go online and read the news. Not everyone's going to listen to a public radio station where most of the people are white voices. So we have to find other ways to engage people. And I think social media offers a lot of opportunities as more people engage with Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And I also think that we need to like find other ways to tell stories, right? Using music and art and narrative storytelling like they do in Atlantic City with a collaboration called Stories of Atlantic City. So it's really about just trying to pool resources, pull people in together to solve an information problem, but also use a variety of different tactics to get people what they need.
Fantastic. All right, I'm gonna. I did want to ask you one question just because it's something that was said earlier. I see that flag hanging over your left shoulder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that way. It's that way. I'm gonna put it this way. I know I never talked about this publicly, so I get to say it now. For 7 weeks, I had a full-time job with the U.S. Census as an evening supervisor at the central office, and I got to see what the inside of the census was like. And one of the things that I learned is our communities did not do a great job of being responsive. They did eventually get to a 99% count, which is really difficult. I say all that to say I looked at the map every single day of who was being counted and who wasn't. And then in Hispanic communities, including in Camden, they were severely undercounted. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I've seen this data. I live in this community. I've had all sorts of friends and alliances with people. I'm in different coalitions. What can we do to make sure that Black people and Puerto Rican people and Dominican people and Mexican people, but the majority of us in Camden are Black or Puerto Rican, so that's why I'm specifically saying that. How can we assure that we are working together to deal with some of these issues and people don't go into their ethnic corners when there seems to be some disagreement with people in power? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, first I have to come collect my people. This is my message to all the Latino people, Puerto Ricans too.
You can say it in Spanish too if you want.
No, we have to be in solidarity with the movement for Black lives, period. Yes. We need to deal with our own issues of racism and colorism.
Yes.
Right? We can't be in solidarity. We can't be working together when people are still doing racist stuff, right? Still have these racist beliefs. And the reality is, especially Puerto Ricans, you know, myself included, like we're like mixed race, right? We're European, we're indigenous Taino, we're African. And the thing is that people, and this is part of colonization, right? Colonization does this. It whitewashes history. It makes people assimilate into the different things and adopt white names and abandon their language. Like we have generations of Puerto Ricans that don't speak Spanish, that don't know nothing about the history, that don't know anything about Puerto Rico. And so that is the problem with colonized minds. And with that comes, you know, racism and white supremacy. And so as a culture, we need to deal with our own issues of colorism, racism, white supremacy, and stop treating Black people differently. You know, we need to be more inclusive of Afro-Latinos within our own culture. Like we got to start there, right? And especially in media, right? Because everything is like we don't see Afro-Latinos represented in media, so that when people like Cardi B and Amara Alegra come along, people are confused and they don't know how to categorize them. And this is like, right, in 2019, a lot of those conversations were happening about those two Afro-Latinas. So that tells me we have a long way to go to explaining and informing people about African diaspora within Latino communities, right? So that's the first thing. And then for people that are aware and awake, you know, again, we have to show up, we have to reach out, and we have to realize that there's a common enemy, right? And that these oppression systems, right, they affect all of us, you know? So working class people have a real opportunity to unite around some very specific things, like getting health care, like getting a $15 minimum wage, the climate crisis, right? Getting affordable housing, getting better schools. So those are the things that people need to focus on, right? Specific policies that we can all agree are good for our communities. And so I think that I've seen a lot of collaboration with people around those issues, and I see a lot of multi-ethnic, multiracial groups advocating for those things. And there's existing structures for people to plug into. So for people that want to get involved and they say like, I'm seeing all these things, the first thing is like, go to a meeting, right? There's all kinds of, there's like Zoom meetings every day of the week. Go to a meeting, tell people you're new, that you want to get involved, and everybody has something to contribute. Every single person can text. Every single person can get on the phone. Every single person can use social media. And so don't think because you don't have an education or you don't have money or you don't speak the language well. Poor people have organized all around the world and have led successful revolutions and have fought for their rights to freedom, So I try to empower people too by letting people know, like, you too can get involved. You don't have to have X, Y, or Z. Like, if you have a voice, if you believe that, if you believe in freedom and your right to exist, then you too can fight back and get involved in an organizing effort. And so those are the two things, right? Like we need to realize that these systems affect us all. Like if you even take the police issue, right? Like police are surveilling Black and Brown communities together, right? And you see a lot of young Black and Brown youth hanging out together. Absolutely. And so it's like, yo, why are we not involved in this police issue? It's affecting our community too. And, I'll just end with this, like Black liberation is like all of our liberation, right? So don't think about like the oppression Olympics. I don't think about it that way. If Black, queer, trans people are liberated, right, then we're all liberated, right?
And I love that. I heard this, what you just said. I heard that concept at a conference I was at last year, and I never dawned on me before that it's almost like I use the metaphor of a classroom. That if you are able to get the lowest performing student to understand the concept, then it's guaranteed that everybody else understands it, right? So if you're a flaming flamboyant homosexual man, you are not going to feel welcome in certain parts of the community. But if you live in a community that says, we don't judge you, we love you, if that person is being treated that way, it's more likely that many people who have concerns about how they're treated are being treated a certain way. And I absolutely agree with that. This is a message that I just wish, Vanessa, I knew this was going to be a good interview, but you turned it into a great one, because I think you're just hitting every nail on the head as you usually do. You're being consistent there.
Yeah, it's about education, right? And right. Like, I hate this concept of like wokeness, right? Like, we're all on a journey, right? Like towards enlightenment. And I'm always learning. Like every day there's some new thing that I'm like, oh damn, like I didn't know that. So people just need to like let go of all of that, right? And just embrace the education and the wisdom from everybody.
And I'm a big fan of Hosier. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to say his name properly, but he has a song, Nina, called Power. It's one of my favorite songs. And the first line of the song is, it's not the waking, it's the rising. And that's like, it's not about being woke. It's about getting up and doing something about it. It's not about being
I don't consider myself woke. I just consider myself open to education and enlightenment, right? Because 5 years ago, I didn't know what I know now. And hopefully in 5 more years, I'll know more stuff. So again, everything is a process. Everybody's at different levels. Organizers need to like meet people where they're at. They need to listen and just, again, empower people to let them believe that they can make a difference. Every single person has something to contribute.
Right.
I'll also say that like change and like challenging systems of power requires personal sacrifice.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And so you just have to be willing to do that. And it's like lifelong, right? Like you just know that for the rest of your life, you are going to be constantly, engaged in a struggle, and that your primary goal or the reward is freedom, right? Freedom for everybody. And so if you don't believe that, then, it's going to be harder for you to plug in. But I think that's what drives me, right? Is that once the most marginalized, oppressed person is free, then we're all free. And so we really have to work from there.
Vanessa, thank you so much. And to all the people that viewed today, thank you so much. I ask that you share this. I ask that you listen to what was said and listen with sincerity and with seriousness. Especially since I'm watching this on StreamYard, I can't see I don't know who my viewers are, but I appreciate you tuning, except for those that commented. I appreciate you tuning in. Vanessa, I put your link, your free press link in the comments. Is there any other information for people to have?
Follow me on Twitter at NewsJohn. That's NewsJohn. And I'll just say two things: that I love Camden people. Camden people are the very best people. They're fighters. They're resilient. They're nice. They're humble. When I worked in Camden, I just met so many great people that I really love and care about that I still talk to today. So I just want to shout out my Camden people. And it's so important that we support local media like the Urban Disruptor, right? Like we have to share, support, let people know that this is a good source of information. So keep up the good work. And we'll keep you posted, right? The Camden News and Information Help is coming.
Yes, it is.
Big things. And if you want to get involved, holler at me or holler at Sean and we'll connect you.
Vanessa, thank you so much. To everybody that watched, please, if you have anything to say, put it in the comments. If you know me, send me a text, an email. Let me know I did a great job or you're disappointed, whatever it is. I love feedback. It makes me better. It makes all of us better. Vanessa, you had so many gems. This really needs to almost turn into a presentation in a way. To my fans and viewers, I do have more information I want to share. It's 11:08, so I'm not going to share it today. But follow me throughout the week, because either through Urban Disruptor or my business, Douglas, I'm saying my company wrong, Du Bois Douglas Strategies. I want to share more information about grants that are available, especially for people that need rental assistance. COVID-19 is still a thing. Cases are going up. We should be prepared for that. And Vanessa, you and I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but it's definitely a conversation that we need to have overall. Actually, I think this is important enough for me to just say to you too real quick. You mentioned the election. If we look at the trend of what's going on in our country in the last few years, the day after the election is going to be a mess in America. And I believe that, and I'm not saying this to encourage it, I'm saying I think it's a prediction, there will be riots in our streets. With that said, and I said this last week in detail, please try your best to go through the process to legally get a gun, protect your family. This is a good time to learn jujitsu, to learn how to protect yourself, your family, to get cameras in front of your house, to have a plan of action. If you work in a downtown area, if you work in retail, you want to have an idea, your job might get shut down for a few days. Plan this. It is going to, whether Trump supposedly wins or Trump loses, it's going to be a mess. And I strongly encourage all of us to get ready. We cannot let just the wealthy and the powerful be prepared for every situation as we are scrambling as things happen, when we know these things can happen. Prepare your family for COVID-19. Prepare your family for this election. Have a vote plan. Vote by mail if you can. If you have questions, concerns, hit me up, inbox me. Let me know if I can be supportive. As Vanessa was just saying, we are going to do our best to make sure anybody, whether you're in a WCMD family or not, if you have a platform, that you have the tools and resources, the knowledge, the training, the support, and maybe even a little bit of money to help you get that work done. So please stay involved and stay engaged. You have any closing thoughts on that?
Keep wearing those masks, y'all. The cases are going up. Keep social distancing. Keep washing those hands. I did a lot of COVID-19 coverage when the pandemic first started. I was doing daily news reports. Luckily, I've stayed healthy. My family has stayed healthy because we follow the guidelines. Don't slack now.
Right.
So I just want to reiterate that message. Like, don't slack. Keep wearing the mask. The masks are meant to protect others, right? So let's take care of one another. And I'll just end by saying, like, we're about to enter a really tumultuous, difficult period. And the only way we're going to survive is by taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other.
That's right.
So get your rest, hydrate, meditate, eat healthy, do all those things to keep your body, mind, and soul intact, but also call people on the phone and check on them and make sure they have what they need. That is how we are going to survive all of this. And so just remember to take care of yourself and each other.
That's right. Thank you so much. And take care, everybody. Thank you so much again, Vanessa. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
You guys out there. Take care.